Hello, everyone, and welcome to this series of videos introducing SNAC.bar. What is SNAC.bar? SNAC.bar stands for SNAC.bar, stands for the Social Network of Actual Conversations. And SNAC.bar is fundamentally a network of conversations. Now, SNAC.bar is also a hyperobject in that it has many facets. And this hyperobject of SNAC.bar in turn lives within a much larger hyperobject, which we are calling the network of networks of conversations for saving, healing, and transforming life on Earth. And it is precisely this latter, much larger network of networks of conversations where all the action is. Yes, SNAC.bar seeks to play an important role, and we will get to that. But let us start with the big picture of the network of networks of conversations. Now, the big picture is that we have an opportunity right now to co-create a form of collective human superintelligence, CHSI, which builds upon all of the other technologies we are so familiar with, including AI, search, social networking, including notably Twitter's X, Facebook, and other forms of social media, and other forms of media, such as podcasts, YouTube videos, etc. And the CHSI, the collective human superintelligence, which is emergent right now, is emerging upon the reintegration of what we're calling actual conversations into the aforementioned formidable ocean of technologies. So let's dive into this ocean for a minute, and I'm going to do this by quoting from Nick Bostrom, the author of the book Superintelligence. And this book is mainly focused on AI, machine intelligence, etc., but it does delve a bit into collective human intelligence. And Nick quotes about collective superintelligence or collective human superintelligence are so good, I'll just screen share them here and just read verbatim, kind of highlighting as I go. But what of the seemingly more fanciful idea that the internet might one day wake up? Could the internet become something more than just the backbone of a loosely integrated collective intelligence? Something more like a virtual skull housing an emerging, unified super intellect. This was one of the ways that superintelligence could arise, according to Werner Vinge's influential 1993 essay, which coined the term technological singularity. Now, against this, one could object that machine intelligence is hard enough to achieve through arduous engineering, and that it is incredible to suppose that it will arise spontaneously. Note the emphasis on machine intelligence, right? We're just talking about collective human superintelligence here. In fact, anyway, so that part of it's a little bit out of place for me anyway. However, the story need not be that some future version of the internet suddenly becomes super intelligent by mere happenstance. A more plausible version of the scenario would be that the internet accumulates improvements through the work of many people over many years, work to engineer better search and information filtering algorithms, more powerful data representation formats, more capable autonomous software agents, and more efficient protocols governing the interactions between such bots. Again, notice the emphasis on, machine intelligence, AI, bots, etc. And that myriad incremental improvements eventually create the basis for some more unified form of web intelligence. It seems at least conceivable that such a web-based cognitive system, super saturated with computer power and all other resources needed for explosive growth, save for one crucial ingredient, could, when the final missing constituent is dropped into the cauldron, blaze up with superintelligence. Now, full disclosure, we believe we have that missing piece of the cauldron. We believe all these other pieces, AI included, search, indexing, social media, etc., are all in place and essentially working quite well. So the missing piece is humanity in a network of networks of conversations, as we'll continue to discuss. All right. So reading on, Bostrom makes two other complementary points, one on page 66. By the way, Nick Bostrom is a professor at Oxford, who's an expert in AI, and he's actually a professor of philosophy, so he's looking really deeply at all these things. Now, these points are really good. So some improvements in communications technologies, especially spoken language, I mean, just language, period, but perhaps also cities, writing, and printing. And I've long argued that the Gutenberg printing press was the single biggest leap forward. I believe bigger, more impactful than the internet, at least up until now. The internet is about to surpass it with what we just read on the previous quote, in my view. Could also be argued to have, individually or in combination, provided supersized boosts in the sense that if another innovation or of comparable impact to our collective intellectual problem-solving capacity were to happen, it would result in collective superintelligence. Now, see, now he's talking more on the human side, spoken language, cities, writing, printing. Printing is technology, but the others, uh, spoken language, cities, and writing, are very human constructs. And so another innovation of comparable impact is exactly what we're talking about, the network of conversations on the internet, and mashed up with all these other technologies. So anyway, this is just good validation, I think. Um, Not that he talks about networks of conversations in his book, Superintelligence. I wish he did. But anyway, reading on. So then on to page 68, another good quote here. If we gradually increase the level of integration of a collective intelligence, it may eventually become a unified intellect, a single large mind, as opposed to a mere assemblage of loosely interacting smaller human minds, which is what we have today. The inhabitants of Mega Earth, and that's just something he postulates for the future, could take steps in that direction by improving communications and coordination technologies, which is exactly what we're talking about, and by developing better ways for many individuals to work on any hard intellectual problem together. That's exactly what we're talking about. A collected superintelligence could thus, after gaining sufficiently in integration, become a quality superintelligence. Okay, so let's talk about this for a minute. So I think the closest thing that he mentioned in that list on the second and last slide there, where he mentions cities, I think that's the closest thing to collective human superintelligence that we've really experienced up until now. Because with cities, you have a whole bunch of people in proximity, just in conversation, constantly in conversation, exchanging information, coming together in groups, whether as businesses or government or nonprofits or just neighbors coming together and figuring stuff out and implementing it. So what we're basically talking about is with our network of networks of conversations is really a global village of hyper-connected networks, plural, of conversations. And so SNAC.bar will be one network of conversations. There are many others. There's Mighty Networks, there's the Sign Network, there's a whole bunch of networks of conversations out there, but it's still in its infancy because this final ingredient hasn't been dropped into the cauldron. So what does this final ingredient look like? So let's first really take stock of and consider the other ingredients already in the cauldron, building off of Nick Bostrom's first slide there that I showed, which include social media, indexing, search, YouTube videos, podcasts, et cetera. So there's tremendous content out there already and tremendous connectivity and messaging, tweets on X. Now, if you mash all those existing technologies up with actual conversations, as we're talking about here, and the social network of actual conversations being those that you can actually participate in and that focus on problems that actually matter, like all the problems within the poly crisis, then mash all those up and what do you get? So let's say that, we get to a point where 1% of humanity is participating in these transformational conversations, these actual conversations. 1% of humanity is 80 million people. And hey, Marco, I'm doing a recording here. So let me just acknowledge you. Oh, shoot. So acknowledging Marco, who just popped in, and Marco, feel free to join in this, just interject if you have questions or whatever as we continue this recording. So with 80 million people in conversation, let's say an average size of 8 people per conversation, these are generally small groups of people in conversation. And if all those 80 million only participate in one such conversation per week, that's 10 million conversations per week happening. And you can imagine the breadth and the depth of those conversations. And then people in those conversations can tweet out insights that they're having, ideas, invitations to other folks to join in those conversations, et cetera, and so on. And then that way, through all the messaging and all the social media that we've already got, Facebook, Twitter, Reddit, et cetera, just imagine overlaying on top of all that, which is all asynchronous text-based, those 3 that I just mentioned. You got your occasional live stream, and yeah, you got your Twitter Spaces and Clubhouse and things like that. But those are nowhere as rich and high bandwidth as face-to-face, real-time synchronous video conference conversations. There's just no comparison to that. So what we're basically talking about is adding to the cauldron this overlay of this massive hyper-connected network of actual conversations, which is, as much about the subject matter and the focus on saving, healing, and transforming life on Earth, solving the poly crisis and transforming ourselves as a species, transforming our world, as it is about the technology, right? So imagine that mashup. And it's kind of one of those things that either you get it or you don't. And if you don't get it, don't worry. Just join us on the block party and we can talk about it. We'll be going deep into this starting at about 11 a.m. Pacific time today. And just to carry on for a few more minutes about this, when we talk about collective human superintelligence as distinct from AI, now AI, there's a lot of different opinions about AI. I just see AI as really good pattern matching and therefore good at predicting stuff, but not so much as at creating, right? That's still in the domain of humans. Now, our creativity can be vastly supported by AI. So, for example, let's say a group of us are having some conversation about how to cool the planet, one of the most serious issues in the poly crisis that we have not solved, and we're actually not close to solving. We have the technology to solve it, I believe, but we haven't gotten it together to implement those technologies and other changes, some of which are just changing our diet, which is not so much a technological change as just a lifestyle change, frankly. And but bottom line, we haven't put it together how to actually cool the planet. Well, through this network of conversations, we can do that because we'll have myriad groups and having conversations about dietary change, about solar radiation management, about decarbonization, about carbon sequestration and storage, iron filings in the ocean, promoting phytoplankton growth, all kinds of amazing stuff. And, so it's really largely a matter of integration at this point, and then building consensus. We're so fragmented as a species. How do we get unfragmented? How do we defrag our species? Conversation. How else? What are the other opportunities or other pathways through which we could really get it together? Well, I can think of a couple. One, some totalitarian dictatorship just takes over and just says, this is what we're going to do, and heavy-handedly tells us all what to do, and we have to do it or else. Another is, God, creator, great spirit, please just like come and tell us. Another is some alien civilization taking over and saying, look, you guys have almost destroyed the planet. We're going to take over from here. I mean, short of those three that I just mentioned, collective human intelligence is what we have left. Let's at least give it a try, right? So through all these mashups with other technologies and just finally coming together. And again, even 1% of us can do the job, and then amongst the things that those 80 million people will do, will be figuring out how to communicate the findings, the creations that they come up with the rest of humanity, through marketing, through PR, through conversation. And look, everyone's invited to join the network of conversations. But anyway, at this point, I'm kind of foaming at the mouth. So at this point, let me stop foaming and just kind of give a brief overview of the rest of the videos that will be in this series, as well as share some tidbits of each. So here's the list. We're going to be talking first about actual conversations, definition, history, and proper place. So, what is, again, the definition of actual conversations? Two main elements: conversations that you can actually participate in and that are focused directly or indirectly on saving, healing, and transforming life on Earth, i.e., topics that actually matter. What is the proper place for actual conversations within today's world, right? We've talked about all the other technologies that exist in social media and all that. This networks of conversations doesn't really exist yet. It's just so fragmented. So the proper place is to come together and actually form a network of networks of substantial size and let it play with the other technologies, right? And let's see what it can come up with and what it can do, right? We'll talk about in this video, in the series, this next video, a brief history of actual conversations in human history. And because for the vast majority of our history, that was how we communicated with each other. We didn't, all this other social media and internet stuff is, of course, very recent additions to that. And we'll talk about the two things that have sort of edged out actual conversations from the world of collective human intelligence and truly pushed us into the realm of collective human stupidity, which are mother culture, which basically tells us that, we don't really matter. Leave it up to the experts, leave it up to, the media, the government, the corporations, the billionaires, and our job is basically just kind of sit there and, watch television and just kind of take it all in, but not contribute meaningfully to what there is to do. So that's one. And the other is that the internet of today, as distinct from the internet of tomorrow, which we talked about on Nick Bostrom's slides, which the internet of today is mostly text-based and, podcasts and recorded videos, which also play into the story of mother culture that basically, look, all the smart people have already weighed in. It's all there on the internet. What can you possibly contribute through, merely blah, blah, blah conversations, right? Um, okay, so that's that video, that next video in the series. The one after that, I'm calling mind-boggling possibilities. Basically, here we're going to get into more of the vision of collective human intelligence. Um, I use the analogy of a bunch of yeah, a flower is a conversation, and the pollinators are the people participating in those conversations, which I represent with the letter P. P for pollinator, P for people in the next slide. So imagine each of these orange ovals is a conversation, and the P's are people or pollinators cross-pollinating, buzzing around, participating in these different conversations. So let's consider for a moment the um, this renaissance of actual conversations, again, mashed up with all the other technologies, as we've mentioned, and that this really forms something of a hierarchy where at the bottom you've got the individual, right? And right now we're very isolated. That's where we mostly hang out as individuals. Yeah, we participate in some conversations, but they're not part of a network of conversations, much less a network of networks of conversations. So the full vision, which we'll get into in this particular video after next in the series, video number 3, that would be, is really like this last image shows. I mean, something just mind-boggling in terms of its potential. This this could symbolize a human brain with, neurons and synapses. But whereas a neuron can merely fire or not, and vary its signal, now imagine that each of these bright spots is an actual conversation, right? And, of which we've got, like I said, millions of as soon as this thing really starts to take off. So the potential is just absolutely mind-boggling, and we'll talk more about that. All right. So from video number 3 to video number 4, which I call, because this is video number 1 that you're watching right now. The video number 4 is the only game in town which almost no one has heard of. So what am I talking about? This is a facet of the whole, right? So remember, I talked about SNAC.bar as a hyperobject, the network of networks as a hyperobject, and that this facet, that it's the only game in town, is the facet which addresses all of us coming together to work on the polycrisis, which is killing us, right? This is like a revolution of love of life, love for each other and love for all of life on Earth, of humanity coming together in conversation, in this network of conversations, overturning the codes of A, silence, and B, stick to your knitting, both of which mother culture has ordained. And this facet of us coming together, is very much on the human side. It's very heart-centric. It's very much a kumbaya of humanity, John Lennon style, coming together, which is different from the preceding video, which really goes off on, the mashup of the different technologies and all the information flow and all that, which is equally important. But here in this video, we're going to go more into, the heart-centric as opposed to the head-centric or intelligent side. In the next video, we'll talk about networks of conversations generally. SNAC.bar is a network of conversations. There are many others, as I've mentioned. And then in the next video after that, we're going to go into networks of conversations. And I believe we ultimately need one planetary network of conversations, which self-identifies as one whole. And this is key. All of humanity recognizing and manifesting our interdependence and our mind-boggling potential to manifest collective human superintelligence and leverage it to literally solve all of our most daunting problems, which constitute the polycrisis. Obviously, to the extent that each of these problems can be solved. So each conversation, not only self-identifying as part of one or more networks, there's nothing wrong with belonging to multiple networks, but also self-identifying as part of the planetary whole of the network of networks. In the next video, we're going to talk about SNAC.bar's role in all of this. And one of our most important roles is precisely promoting the category of networks of conversations, not just our network of conversations at SNAC.bar, but all networks of conversations. And part of doing that is by setting the best example we can of a network of conversations. And, how do we do this? Through developing actual conversations as a medium, being those that you can actually participate in. So whatever conversations there are on SNAC.bar, you can participate in all of them, and which actually address the polycrisis in a meaningful way. And another role of SNAC.bar is to promote and help lead the entire network of networks of conversations. And another way that we're contributing is by pioneering ways and means of meaningful dialogue, which are productive and efficient. And I really want to acknowledge Mark McCormick, his use of timers, universal logic, Hegelian logic, ever-living meetings, proof of truth, law of unabandonment. He's really pioneering a whole bunch of great stuff. As is Stan Pockris, as is Shannon MacArthur, as are so many other folks, Chief Phil Lane Jr. So we're really going to be helping to, promote the best practices for conversations, transformational conversations, actual conversations. Next video after that will be the polycrisis and how we have addressed it thus far as a species. And as soon as I say as a species, first notice how these words land for you, how we have addressed it thus far as a species. Notice that we're not used to doing things as a species, doing anything as a species. But anyway, let's take a look at how we've addressed the polycrisis, our problems, and our unaddressed opportunities so far. Let's explore the full gamut of how we have addressed these different facets of the polycrisis. And let's put this full gamut on trial. How effective have these been, our ways and means of addressing things in the current paradigm, sans these networks of transformational conversations? Now, I think the answer is obvious, but hey, let's have a fair trial, shall we? Okay. So, and then the next video will address, fringe conversations, which are kind of way out there, way far away from the mainstream, versus transformational conversations. Largely huge amounts of overlap between those two, but both of those are pretty far away from mainstream conversations. So we're just kind of taking a look at the full gamut of conversations here. Then we'll talk about the implementation of SNAC.bar, which I've got a couple slides on this. One is imagine us having like an interface where you can see multiple different conversations happening in parallel, live conversations, and you can see live streams of them. Look at the titles, you can browse around, you can search, you can filter. You can filter by major topic groupings. Feel free to pause this video and give these a read. These are just some important examples. It's not the full set of major topic groupings, but if you click on any one of these, it would only show those conversations that are primarily in that major topic grouping. So you can browse around, and when you see a conversation that looks interesting, you see you've got these, you can unmute. If you look at the icon in the lower left of each such rectangle, you can unmute the mic and listen in and kind of, really kind of try before you buy, which I think will take us a long way in terms of getting out of the trepidation that a lot of people have to join transformational conversations. So, um, and then finally, one other uh, topic that we're going to discuss in one final video is that of decentralization. Now, the basic idea of decentralization here is that we there's I just don't see a viable way or nor do I have any desire to see a viable way for the whole network of networks of conversations to become centralized in any way, shape, or form. I think decentralization is the only way to go. And that's why rather than trying to build just one giant network of transformational conversations, to form collect this missing ingredient of collective human superintelligence, that we really cultivate a network of networks, and that each network not just promote its own network, but that it promote all networks. And so, for example, on SNAC.bar, you're going to see lists and lists of other networks that you can join or check out their conversations, et cetera. And I encourage all networks to do that. Um, and here we really have to be open, because a lot of these networks of conversations aren't necessarily going to be, oh, transformational or actual as we define actual conversations. And so they may not, be totally consistent with SNAC.bar. That's okay, right? We need to come together in conversation, whether mainstream or fringe or transformational or radical or whatever forms of conversations, and really form this planetary brain. Anyway, thank you so much for listening, and please look out for the next videos in the series as I've just identified. All right. I hope you're all well, and hope to see you here on the block party. Come join us. We're going to be delving into these topics in earnest at 11 a.m. Pacific time today. Okay. Thanks, everyone.